congratulations. Little known fact of the day, every little thing's gonna be A-okay. A-okay.
Everybody, welcome. I'm Neil Pepe. I'm the Artistic Director of the Atlantic Theater Company. Thank you so much for joining us for the second Little Known Facts at the Atlantic live podcast event. Little Known Facts is a podcast hosted by my friend and an actress who has performed here on the Atlantic stage, Ilana Levine. Not only is Ilana an actress, but she has become the host of this critically acclaimed podcast, which has over 125 episodes to date, featuring interviews with some of the most successful artists working today in theater, film, and television. We were so thrilled to have Mary Steenburgen and Ted Danson back in December for the first live event. And tonight, it is an honor to welcome from our wonderful production of The Mother, the extraordinary actress Isabelle Huppert, the amazing director Trip Cullman, joined by our lovely host Ilana Levine. Please welcome them to the stage.
Live podcast recording of Little Known Facts. I am so honored to be back here again. Neil just said it, but I did some of my very first plays here when I started out at the Atlantic. So the idea that I'm here now as I venture on this new adventure on this stage is really meaningful. So I just want to take a moment to thank Neil Pepe and everyone at the Atlantic who has been a part of this event and putting The Mother together, the extraordinary play that Isabelle stars in and that Trip has directed. It's a really special place to be, and thank you all for coming out on a Sunday night. Many of you have probably seen the production of The Mother. We are on the set where the play lives. But even if you haven't, this discussion will be compelling for you because we're going to talk about themes that, whether you've seen the play or not, they're pretty universal. But I want to first start out by asking you guys a little bit about how this marriage of director and actress came to be, and that you were joining us from France on this stage in America to do this play by Florian Zeller. Tell us a little bit about how it came to be that you guys decided to do this.
Okay. Well, the play is French, as you know, but strangely enough, I hadn't seen it in Paris, and so the whole thing came from here, from New York, actually, through a man called Jeffrey Richard, who had the rights of the play, and who that I met, and he asked me if I would consider doing this play. And in the first place, I was really surprised. I'm very different from the French actress who took the role in the first place, and so I didn't really think of it. Then I read the play in English first. The play has been translated by Christopher Hampton, and I have to say I read it in the night, and I just had a conversation with my own son just an hour before. Not to say that my relationship with my son is the same, but in a way, I mean, it echoed in a way when I read the play, as it does, I think, for any mother in the world. And I remember it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I read the play, and at 5 o'clock when I knew that Jeffrey was going to answer, I called him and I said, I want to do it, I will do it. I mean, I really fell in love with the play, with the role. It resonated for me very strongly. And eventually, Jeffrey made me meet Trip, and we had wonderful conversation about the play, and then we came to the Atlantic Theater, which is such the perfect place, and we met Neil Pepe here, and so it all you know, very gently here we are. That's how it happened.
I guess for me, our first meeting was what they call in the business a general, which just means that we sat down and had a meeting at a very swanky hotel lobby bar, and
Were you in America or?
it was in
France?
America.
Okay.
It was in New York, and I just, as a little gay boy growing up in New York City, if someone had told my 44-year-old self that I would be having a drink with the great Isabelle Huppert, I would have fallen over and writhed in ecstasy or something.
Can you show us what that would look like?
She came in and looked amazing and ordered a Coke, which I thought was so chic. And but then I loved meeting you immediately. It was like it went from me idolizing you as an actress and thinking you're one of the greatest actresses on planet Earth to very, very quickly just understanding each other as human beings and knowing immediately that we would be able to work together very, very, very well. And then I had sort of at the same time met Florian, and who was, I'd seen the father, and he came to see a production of mine of 6 Degrees of Separation that was running on Broadway a couple of years ago. And we hit it off immediately as well. And then Jeffrey, who had produced a play of mine called Significant Other, sort of put us all in the same sphere together on this play.
So he was the matchmaker in a way.
He was definitely the matchmaker.
Can I ask either one of you a favor? Because not everyone here has seen the play or read it like I did beforehand. Can you give a brief synopsis, maybe, of what the play is about? And then we can talk about how you two began to explore it together in rehearsal.
No, well, the play is about this relationship between this mother and her son and her husband, because it starts with the husband. The husband is a bit, as you said, do you say deficient in English? Same word as in French, so to say the least. And the originality to the play, I mean, what makes the play so particular and so specific and so original is that it's a constant journey between dreams and reality, and there is a repetition of the scenes, so that very quickly we don't know if the mother makes it up or if it is reality. I mean, there's this constant shift between dream and reality, which makes it really interesting. And I think that very quickly we didn't oblige us to really determine, is this the reality, is this not the reality? I think there is a poetry to it that makes the difference, and you have to let yourself being kind of drifted in this kind of very strange journey, because it's more about, for me, it's more about the inner life of a person rather than is she mad, is she not mad. It's more about the fantasy. I mean, everybody has fantasies. Everybody at some point thinks that he wants to kill his neighbor, for example, or things like this. Luckily, he doesn't do it, but it's more about this intimate and this kind of thing that you can't really confess, that you have to, I mean being a social person means that you have to compromise and keep it for yourself. And the play, in a way, brings, like in psychoanalysis, that brings to the surface some conscious or some unconscious thoughts, and that's what it is about. I mean, it's nothing more and nothing less, I would say.
I agree. I think, just to add to that, I think it's also a play about a woman who finds herself, we would say in America, an empty nester, suddenly in a home with children who have grown up and moved out, and who's sort of thrust into a confrontation with herself because she had to find herself almost wholly through her love of her children and raising of her children, and then is left sort of flailing without an anchor to her life and what that means. But I think the most compelling part about this play is that it is an absolutely sort of laser sharp window into the psychology and interior life of a person, without it being sort of like the psychology being sort of a monologue about when I was young I had to endure a hard father and blah blah blah. It shows you her interior life literally on stage, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you see, it's very exciting, and if you haven't seen it, just come back and see it, and because it is very much a magical experience, and it really is a poem, I think, when you describe it as such. So the scenes repeat themselves in a very subtle way. Suddenly a very small bit of dialogue is different. They're not huge shifts each time we see it again, and so there's something very exciting at the beginning of the play. When you walk in, Isabelle is already sitting on stage, reading, and I don't know how much before we come in that you're already out there, but immediately you're thrust into something other. We're basically the actress, and also Isabelle Huppert you're a very famous actress, and we all have our own feelings about you, but mostly through cinema. So I think you'd all agree, it's incredibly exciting when suddenly she's sitting right there. Right? Like there's this whole moment of like, wait, is she real? Like she's right there. So I want to just ask you, and I wanted to touch her, but I didn't touch her because I understand that's not appropriate. But I guess even starting with that, because I did read the play, just to get a sense of if the translation, the French, this is an English translation of the French, which means that even in this play, the husband who's going off to do a seminar is going to Dijon, and then you guys say buffalo.
Buffalo.
Say it one more time.
I know how to say buffalo. I do it on purpose.
By the way, it is no small thing to be hilarious in a language that is not your own. Like, I find that extraordinary, because comedy is hard, probably the hardest thing to do for an actor, I think. You can't hide behind anything, you can't cheat, the joke lands or it doesn't. You can pretend to cry, but you cannot pretend to get a laugh. It doesn't work. So the idea that you are so successful with the comedy in English is just one more thing that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but there is a rhythm to the writing. It's also very obviously very funny, you know, objectively very funny. But I didn't expect it to be so funny because it's not my language, and I know that I speak sometimes very fast. But it was a very nice surprise, even for me. Yeah, you're perfectly right. It's probably easier to handle a foreign language in a dramatic text rather than in a comic text. Yeah, but I don't know. There is something in Florian Zeller's writing which, and through Christopher Hampton's translation, which really works so well, so that it was never really an issue. I mean, when I think I started doing it like this from the very beginning of the rehearsals, and it's not even something that Trip and I worked on specifically, just because I think there was something very obvious in the writing.
So Trip, I understand that when you first began, you assisted Mike Nichols.
I did.
So you've begun your career with Mike and Joe Mantello and some wonderful directors who Joe continues to be a prolific director in the theater. And something I read that you have done, and I don't know if you did it in this process, but that you attribute to Mike Nichols, is that during that awkward period when actors have to get up after reading at the table for a while, the script, that kind of like you feel like a fawn where you don't quite know how to walk and talk at the same time, that there's an exercise that you've done, that Mike taught you, where you read the entire script for the actors, and they get up and walk around free to not worry about the text.
So that actually is a technique that I did not learn from Mike Nichols. I learned that from Adam Rapp, the playwright and director, who learned it from Mike Lee, the great English director and writer.
When this is broadcast, what I will say is, Trip, I understand that Adam Rapp from Mike Lee learned this incredible thing when the actors are at that tricky point.
Well, it's the most tricky point because you want to stay alive, completely alive to your impulses, because you're discovering what it is in 3 dimensions for the first time, and yet if you're still not off book, you're married to the script still. So how can you stay alive to impulses if your head's buried down here? So the technique is that I read all the stage directions and lines, and the actors kind of move through the world as if they're in a silent movie. And so they just stay completely alive to each other. And it's actually an amazing technique. It's especially amazing if you're doing a scene that has like 6 people in it. And it's great for a director too, because it immediately obviates my obsessive need to control everything. Because I'm buried in the script. So I'm reading and reading and reading like this, and I'm not even watching for the first 8 times that it happens. So I'm letting the actor's impulses go free, and so my need to start organizing and controlling everything is delayed.
So how did you guys start working
But
on
we
this
didn't do
play?
that on this one.
No.
No.
What was the process for sort of learning the world of the mother?
I think there is a process, a common process to any stage work, actually. I mean, I didn't know that technique that Trip is talking about, but as far as I am concerned, I mean, the beginning, for me, starting the rehearsals is like, it might sound a bit pretentious, but it's literally creating a world. It's like you take a piece of, I always through this sculpture metaphor, it's like having a piece of mud and really shaping it. And it's a very long process, very mysterious to you, leaving people together with a text, and gradually, you don't know why and you don't know how, it takes shape. And of course, a good director, a great director, as Trip is to let the actors give shape to that thing. And that's why I say it's like creating a world, because I feel like when I start rehearsing a play, like being the first human being walking on Earth, I mean, by definition, you work on a material that's unknown to everybody, and gradually something takes shape, and it's very difficult. I mean, it's hard to explain. It's very beautiful also, because it's very, and also I noticed that not all the time, but very often, what you do intuitively and impulsively in the very first time, most of it you keep it. It's very strange. It's like what you really felt, and in your mind when you read the play, you just do it in the first days and remember that, and I'm not saying that we kept most of it, but we kept, yes, a good deal of it. And then of course you have to learn the lines, and that's the worst. Oh my God, you just go crazy, because I know that some actors would arrive with text known, not many actors, but some, but certainly not me, so. And because I also do think that the memory goes also with the memory of the body language, so it's very difficult to learn a text just like this out of nothing. You learn it more easily when you know how you are going to move on stage, but still, at some point, you still have to really learn it, and oh my God. and this one is particularly tricky to learn because of the repetition of the scenes and with slightly different changes. So, but I think now we know it, hopefully.
I mean, I thought this process was very freeing because you can't look at this play in terms of realism and logic. You have to look at it in terms of dreams and dream logic. So what I loved was a process where I didn't have to ever say to Isabelle, this part you're really listening, you really do hear what he's saying, and in this part you're not hearing what he's saying, and this, it was just about our intuition. Like just being so open to what we both felt intuitively, and it was such a joy that we were on the same exact page 99.9% of the time. And then for me as a director, it's just about creating an environment where everyone's feeling empowered to bring their A game and their artistic intuition and agency to bear. So it was exciting that way.
The idea of having a beautiful, modern, but very sparse set, that is another character in this play, especially this adaptation of this play. Was that something that the designer brought to you and was like, I see it like this, and then they just have a lot of room to imagine whatever they're going to imagine, or was that very much in your mind from the beginning?
We had I'm not kidding you, about 70 different versions of this set that we worked through. But you mentioned the beginning with Isabelle sitting on this 36-foot long couch, reading a Marguerite Duras novel and sort of waiting for her husband to come home. And to me, all of that in this set, this wall is completely closed off. It looks like an entirely contained brick wall. To me, it was all about the world is the world of her mind, and she's not allowed to escape. So she's there from the beginning when the audience come in, and there's no way, it's literally like sound, there's no exit. So I wanted that feeling, and I wanted the entrances of the other characters who are in some ways figments of her subconscious to, one character comes right from the audience, another character comes from the back, so it's just, you just never know, everything is slightly off, it's like, I don't know if you've ever had a dream where you or walk through a door and then you're in an entirely different world, and then you walk through another door and you're in an entirely different world, or in a dream when you wake up and you think, okay, I'm awake, and then you realize you just woken up into another dream. I wanted that feeling for it. So I think the set, the spareness of the set, the oddity of this long couch, the weirdness that it goes away, and then to me when the couch goes away, it's also about the husband's left, and she says, "We're alone at last," right? I don't know if that's the right line, but it's based something and to her son, and so it becomes their playground. It becomes their this space where they can just be free with each other finally.
Well, I love in this play, and in so much of the work that you do, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I feel like you are one of the least judgmental humans on the planet. And I don't know how that is in your own real life when you're not acting, but certainly the roles you choose are very complicated women. And the thing that is always really exciting to behold as a viewer is how you love each of them, regardless of the choices they're making in their daily life. It always feels like it's the circumstances that are problematic more than this person's attitude. And this is another part where, you watch it as a parent, as a human. There are lines that are crossed between this woman and her son. It's very exciting to watch it. How did you guys sort of think about casting for the son? And how did you guys sort of work on that part of the play?
Well, I wanted to surround Isabelle with very good actors, because she's a very, very, very good actor. And I had worked with Justice Smith, who plays the son, on a British play called Yen, a couple of years ago, and I just was so taken with his brilliance, and I thought, and I also knew that he spoke French, and I knew that what I wanted was because in the transposition of this play to this American premiere, I made the choice that Isabelle is a French woman who has married an American man and moved to America and is sort of an expat. And so I wanted some intimation that the conversations between the son and the mother would take place in French, that they had their secret language, their secret intimacy with each other, that the husband was not a part of. And so I wanted a French speaker who could speak French with Isabelle.
And there is one line added when I said I'm in a foreign country. That doesn't exist in the play. But it does now. Because I am in a foreign country.
So you have worked with many of the same directors in film repeatedly. That's sort of been part of your legacy. I hope this is the beginning of you and Trip working together many times, because
so I would be honored.
And I hope your 4-year-old self hears that, Trip Cullman, because really there's a dance, an artistic dance that's happening in this play that's very special, and for those of us who got to see it or will get to see it. Tell me a little bit about, for you, the difference in terms of, when you do a film, so much of it is what you do, and then the director is surrounding you visually with a world that helps to tell the story. This set in particular, as gorgeous as it is, it's pretty stripped down in terms of what there is to guide an actor in any way. It really is all on the company of these talented people to create the world for us, We're like, are they in Malibu? We don't know where they are, right? In terms of this very magical realism that you're kind of creating up here. So I guess I have two questions. What is it that you want from a director when you approach something like this? What is it you wanted from Trip?
I think I want him to give me freedom, and of course you were establishing a difference between movies, let's say to be rough, being more realistic, and a play like this where it's more abstract. But I think that was the good news about it for me. I mean, it needs to be abstract. It needs to be. I would have been much more restrained if the set was more realistic, for example. I mean, the fact that it is so abstract gives you a lot of freedom, and I think that's what I expect most from a director, to give me freedom, to give me also. You were saying that some minutes ago that apparently I love my character. Yes, I would say I love my character, but to the point that I love them so much that I don't make them lovable in a way.
Yes,
because I think to love the character is to make them as complete as possible, with as many shadings as possible, many contradictions, many complexities, and not necessarily to make them lovable. And for sure that woman is not always lovable. I mean, she's so. She's very strange also, so you can't. I mean, you love her, but you don't love her in the sense that she's so sweet. She's certainly not sweet. So what I expect from a director is to give me as much freedom as possible. I think there is no better gift for an actor to feel free and to really explore that strange thing that people have sometimes a hard time understanding. It's this cross between you and the character. And for me, if I can't put as much as possible as of myself, of course it's a character, of course it's a fiction, of course it's a play, but each adventure has to be a kind of almost existential adventure, and it has to be a little story between me and me. I love that quote by a great theatre man called Grotowski. I don't know if you've heard of Grotowski, and Grotowski, used to say, acting is not about something between you and your partner. It's not. No, he said, acting is not something between you and the audience. It's not something between you and your partners. It's not even something between you and you. It's something between you and something very, very mysterious above you, which I thought is wonderful, because that's exactly what it is, and you deal with this, and for me, a director has to, let you be in your own world, and that's how you can give the best performance without giving you restrictions, and it's certainly what Trip offered me on that work.
What I really love about this woman who's going through a very hard time repeatedly in this play is how much joy you bring to it also. Like the depths of her feelings, whatever they are, it's like full stop.
Well, I think we were very happy when we discovered, we didn't discover, but we read the first page and said it calls black farce. And so we were so happy with that definition, because it says what it says. It's very dark, it's very black, it's not white. That's why the set is so white, in contradiction to it, but it's a black farce, and I think it's very, very funny. And I don't think that there is great work without a great sense of humor and irony. It's always so wonderful when you can, at the same moment, bring tragedy and something also very funny. And certainly in that play, you play and it makes it more desperate sometimes. It's more harsh, more disturbing too, because the more you laugh and the more it's scary. And so I think the writing really carries these two dimensions. Very, very funny and very dark.
I saw a film, I think it's called What Comes Next. Is that the name of a film that you did about a woman? She's a teacher. Her husband also leaves.
Things to Come.
Things to Come, sorry. I wasn't sure the exact French translation. And what's really incredible, I was thinking a lot about the comparisons of the character you're playing now, because that's a woman whose children are gone, her husband leaves, and she says something, there's a car ride, and I'm going to misquote you, but it was one of the most extraordinary things for me as someone who thinks about that time of my life, where you look at, your mother's died, your husband is left.
Yeah, she says, yes, my husband left me, my mother died, my children left, and I'm very happy, or something like this.
And there was, yes,
And she said, I've never been more happy.
Yes, and I thought there's so many ways to, right, like to look at this same moment in your life. That character felt completely liberated.
Contrary to this woman.
And this, right. And the idea that you're sort of getting to do these parts where it's a woman facing the same challenges in life and with such a different attitude, I thought do that. Did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, just in contrast to that in this play, I think I always am so moved at the end of this play because I think it's so beautiful to think about a mother's love for her child is something that is, I think, the most powerful force in the universe in some ways. And yet part of that love in a healthy way has to be about letting that child go. You have to...
Well, it's very hard, Trip.
I know. And the end of this play, Isabelle's character has this beautiful speech where she remembers her happiest moment of taking these little kids to school and the kisses that they give her as she lets them go across the schoolyard and go into school for the day. And then, she keeps, throughout the play being like, why hasn't he ever called me back? Why, which sounds exactly like my mother.
The son, yeah.
But then she says, so tell me, what was all that for? When it comes down to it, what was all that for? And to me, that is like devastating. Devastating.
Specifically, there's a moment where she talks about, which I so related to, carrying their satchel. I was like constantly, they'd be skipping ahead, right? With like, I'm carrying 3 backpacks and 4 lunch bags, and I'm like, they're Sherpa, basically. And there was something, I had such a visceral memory of that. And it goes really fast. I mean, I think that's the thing. And I mean, you have children that you referenced, and presumably a mother, right? So we've all gone through every one of these stages, and you think back, did I do that to my mother? Sort of the natural progression of things. Speaking of the mother, if I am correct, it was your mother who sort of entered this idea in your life of pursuing acting. Is that true, or had some idea about you as an actress?
No, I think it's not far from being true. Yes, I think all mothers sometimes have an intuition about their children, and she certainly, not put barriers. I mean, she encouraged me being an actress, which was nice. Because, I mean, you always hear these stories about, I had to fight for doing what I wanted to do, and my parents wanted me to do something else. No, for me, they were very happy for me being an actress from when I was 16 years old. So that I never encountered any setbacks. It was really nice.
And you really haven't stopped since then. I mean, when you think about it, it's really extraordinary. You too, Trip. I feel like basically out of the gate. I mean, I met you, we were talking about it, you were assisting. My husband did a play called Take Me Out that Joe Mantello directed. You were assisting on that play. That was almost 20 years ago now. I met you, you were like a little fetus. And it's kind of extraordinary. You have 17 plays on Broadway right now, as we sit here.
0 at the moment, but Choir Boy just closed. But no, actually, that's another thing I think about what made Isabelle and I so simpatico, was that we just love work. We just want to work. And I loved that we never stopped working, and we never, even on the stage manager would call a 10-minute break, and we would still be like, well, but what about I just have such enormous respect for someone who puts all the trappings of ego and all that kind of stuff aside, and it's just about, let's figure this out together.
Because it's not real work, no, it's true. I mean, we, of course it's a work. We do a living out of it, and it's a work. But it's not real work. It's because it's also something. It's something we love. We love doing. It's also a necessity. So it's a bit edgy because sometimes it's also like an addiction, because you can't do without it. So it's a passion. Sometimes it's also a bit like a poison passion, because an addiction is an addiction. So, I mean, it's something that you can't do without it, but hopefully we love it. So it's all this kind of strange thing. We end up doing it all the time because we can't do otherwise.
That's so deep. I need to talk to my therapist immediately. I need to talk to my therapist. Yeah.
About the work addiction. Well, you have done films all over the world. You've done plays all over the world. And you have 3 children?
3.
3 children. So did they come with you? How did you handle the balance of working passionately and in this addiction, as you call it, with raising a family? How do you do that?
Oh, I did it. I don't think I think you have much more difficult lives to raise children than my life, you know. I mean, I have a very good life, and I think some women in the world are so much more, how could I say?
Struggling.
Yeah, struggling than I do, so I'm not going to complain.
Did they go with you? I guess
Yes.
that's really my question. Did you include your whole family in this journey?
When I could, yes, maybe too much sometimes, yes. I really, they didn't have the choice. Yes, I did. I really included them as much as I could for my own pleasure and comfort, because I needed to. So maybe sometimes they wanted to, sometimes they didn't. But yes.
So I wanted to, if it's okay with you guys, let the audience ask a few questions, if that works. So if we could lower maybe those lights a little bit so we can see better. Can someone just tell me what time it is? 7:45. Yep. Thank you, Al Styron. So who has a question for either Trip or Isabelle? Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead. Isabelle Huppert, firstly, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
This really was a surprise party for Isabelle, let's face it. Happy birthday.
I wanted to ask, reading and listening to you through so many interviews, you have a great knowledge of the arts from cinema to literature. I was wondering, what do you do when you are seeking inspiration or solace? These are difficult times, so do you have any sort of go-to concepts when you want inspiration?
I don't think I find, for me, I'm an actress and I'm a spectator, and so I know exactly what it means to be an actress and to be a spectator. And in fact, there is no real circulation from my life as a spectator, as a very curious person, for arts, for going to museums, to reading books, to listen to music like everybody in the world. And my life as an actress, I think my life as an actress is much more, I always take the example of the Bronte sisters, for example, not that I compare myself to the Bronte sisters, but when you think of these women who never left their neighborhood, in the north of England, and who came out with all these extraordinary stories, it all came from their inside world, and I keep believing, well, of course, I don't know, because I saw so many things, and I saw so many people, and I traveled so much, so it's hard to tell for me to really confirm this, because I never, my life is very different from theirs, but I feel like my life as an actress is really something, let's say, if I still could be an actress without coming out of my room, it's really a very inner process, and nothing to do with this other thing for my life, which is just being very curious and be very fulfilled with watching many, many things, again, and taking pleasure of experiencing all these different things. But it doesn't really reflect on my life as an actress. And as for inspiration, I don't know. I don't know. It's, I think also for me being an actress is being really, I don't know, it's a bit harsh maybe to sing that, but I really believe it. If you compare it to a singer, a dancer, any other profession where also you express yourself, actress, I thought it thrives on something more, it thrives on something, or being unable to do anything else in a way, not abilities, but on inabilities. It's kind of, and for me, it's a bit being empty, and just you have to feel something, But that's what it is about. But it doesn't really rely on something. I don't want to sound too negative for actors, but it's a very strange profession in a way, because it's not you know what I mean. It's not like you have. And even, when it comes to acting school, and it's very, you can't compare it with learning how to dance, learning how to sing, learning how to paint, learning how to act. Do you learn how to act? No, you just are. It's not really, and it's really something about being, more doing, you know. And I don't know how you do it, you know, but you do it. But it's a bit unpalpable, that's what I mean, which is a bit scary sometimes, in a way.
But that's why you've had the career you've had. Whatever you're talking about, your imagination, whatever it is, you've been doing that since you're 16. And it served you really well. There's something that you've been able to trust and tap into, and it's extraordinary. And we've been the beneficiaries of that magical gift that you have.
It's also about meeting, because of the people I met. I don't think that you can be an actress. You can, of course, act, as I said, you know, just staying in your room. But then it's also about meeting certain people, meeting directors mostly, because you're not an actress just like this. You know, you have to be seen, looked at by somebody.
True. Yes.
It's a French play and you're doing a translation. I'm wondering what you discovered about doing the play in English that you might think of if you did the play in French. How are they the same?
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, if I do Shakespeare in French, it's also a translation. You know, that's what it is about. And of course, to translate is necessarily to betray, in a way. We all know that, but that's how it is. And I think really Christopher Hampton did such a wonderful translation. I think he betrayed it. In that case, he didn't really betray it. You know, he managed to respect the rhythm. There is a very specific rhythm to this play. It's also a very contemporary language. So I don't know. It might be if you take Shakespeare, for example. It's certainly. I mean, I know. You know, in France we speak about so many different ways of translating Shakespeare. You know, whether it is a François Victor Hugo or some. You know, I mean, there is a really and it creates great. You know, some would want certain translations, some other want some other translation because it's such a metaphorical language. In this case, it's more about rhythm, and it's a very elliptic language. So I think in that case it might bear the support the translation better than another language.
I wanted to ask you quickly, were Florian Zeller or Christopher Hampton in the room while you were rehearsing?
For the first week, yeah, they were here while we were working on, because we had to do a lot of work with Christopher of translating his translation, because there's a lot of Britishisms in his translation that we then had to Americanize. So they were there and around to doing that. And Florian was also doing a little tiny cuts and changes as he heard the play again for the first time in several years. So it was a very thrilling process. And I love the actors, not Isabelle, but some of the other actors would be like, so Florian, what did you mean when this were? And I love it because Florian said, I have no idea. But I love that because I think that's really true. I think it's very similar to the way how Isabelle was just describing the process of being an actor and acting. I think writers, when they're really gifted, they're channels. They channel voices that come through them. When I did 6 Degrees of Separation, I asked John Guare, like, what is this, the play that we're working on? He said, this is the first draft. And I wrote it in 2 days. And the published version that you're working on this revival is the play that I wrote in 2 days. Because the voices just came through him.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes?
I want to know what your favorite writer is in fiction or
Who is my favorite writer? Oh my God. I don't know.
Who are you reading at the top of this play? When you're sitting with a book, what are you reading?
Oh, I'm reading The Lover, and it's by Marguerite Duras, and it's very interesting because I'm doing readings of that book in France. I did it in various places. You know, I do readings of certain books. I do readings of Marquis de Sade also. That's very different. And I did The Lover in China, for example. Not the Marquis de Sade in China, of course, but The Lover. And it's fascinating because it's so much connected to the play. And in the book that I read on my couch for 25 minutes, I have to, and sometimes I fall asleep, sometimes I have a lot of occupation on that couch. But at the end of the book, it's parts of interviews by Marguerite Duras, and oh my God, she says such wonderful things about life in general, about what it means to be a mother, everything. And I read that, and it's in the book, and it's just wonderful. And you chose, I never asked you. We never discussed it, because Trip gave me that book, but it's it's just a perfect choice, and we never discussed that together.
Yeah.
That's the occasion.
Yeah, and it's not written in the play that the mother is there. I chose the book. I chose that she's out in the audience because I thought it was powerful, and I thought having it be Duras was right.
That's perfect. So, but as to say, I don't know enough about world literature to say I have a favorite author and book. I just love reading books. That's all. And yeah, I couldn't live without the idea of reading books. I'm saying that because it looks like few people read books now. What a pity.
For sure. Okay, one more question. Yes?
I have a question, and you kind of answered it already, but I'm still curious, and it's about the pronunciation of buffalo. That made me laugh when I saw the play, and in fact, at a certain point, since it's repeated, at a certain point I thought, oh, she's doing that on purpose, and that made me laugh even more. And so what I wondered, I even told people about it after, and I wondered, how did that happen? Did you stumble upon it? Did you say buffalo and then have him say, oh, it's buffalo, but leave it that way? Or how did you choose?
So, just really quickly, it's interesting because in the original French, it's Dijon, which is a city.
Yeah. Dijon is a funny word. Dijon, and we do mustard in Dijon.
And also, the character of the city, as I understand, is not quite. It's okay. You know what I mean? It's a industrial city. It's
If you say you live in Dijon, you say.
So we did,
which is not good because Dijon is a very beautiful city. But Dijon is.
So we made lists. We auditioned 1 million different city names. We did, and then we wanted to find something that sounded in English the equivalent kind of odd and funny that Dijon does in French. And so Buffalo won.
But how did I end up saying buffalo instead of buffalo? I don't know how to say buffalo.
I think you might have said buffalo once, and we all went, and then we said, don't change the way how you say it ever, ever, ever. It's perfect.
All right, I hope this doesn't embarrass Isabelle too much, but can we just sing happy birthday to her? We'll finish the night, and un, deux, trois. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Isabelle. Happy birthday to you. So, the first time I did one of these with Mary and Ted, it was SantaCon. And so there were drunk Santas everywhere that you had to walk through to get here. Today is St. Patrick's Day. There were probably drunk leprechauns everywhere. And the fact that you continue to come, regardless of the drunken holiday that is outside these doors, to support theater here at the Atlantic Theater, an institution here in New York that I personally am so grateful for, and I'm sure you would all agree with me. And for Isabelle and Trip, who are doing so much right now to spend this hour with us. It's really lovely of both of you. So thank you for being on the podcast. And thank you all for coming. Get home safely. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Little known fact of the day, every little thing's gonna be A-okay.